Do you know anything about the way Grandpa and Grandma met?
No, I don't know how they met. They were both in college at the time. He was at Loyola, she was at Dominican. Neither one finished college, which I think they regretted later. And then they married, and I was the first baby.
What was the age difference between Grandpa and Grandma?
There was a 5 months difference between the two of them. They were both born in 1899, and they were in their 20s when they married, just early 20s.
Okay, Mama, you shared a story with us about when your brother John was born. Can you tell us that again?
Yeah, I was about 7 years old, and the doctor came with his little black bag, and there was no baby. And when he left, we had a baby, so I thought he brought the baby in his little black bag. Years later, when my brother Bill and my sister Betty were born, they were both born at Truro. And they were the first ones born in hospital. The rest of us were born at home.
Mama, tell us about Grandma's flower shop.
I was about 9 years old when my mother decided to start a little flower shop in a corner of my daddy's hardware store. I forgot to tell you, my daddy had a hardware store on Lopez Street. And my mother started off selling plants and cut flowers. But when we moved on Tulane Avenue, 3118 Tulane Avenue, he was closing out the hardware store, and the flower shop became the big business. And then she handled funerals and weddings and everything. And I never did much in the flower shop, but my sister Dot helped her an awful lot in the flower shop.
Mom, what was your first memory of your mother?
Well, I have a lot of memories of my mother, but my first thing that I can really remember was being in church, kneeling next to her, and doing something that she apparently approved of. And she looked down at me, smiled, and I knew she appreciated what I was doing. And I can remember also her being a pianist. She was a wonderful pianist. She learned to play piano at Dominicans, and she could play anything. And she taught me to play the piano, which I never could do very well, but I did play.
Mom, tell us about your mother's brothers and sisters.
Well, my mother had one sister, and her name was Aloysia. And of course, with a name like that, they called her Babe. And we all called her Aunt Babe. And my mother had one brother, Sidney, and he died young. He had TB, and he died young. And I don't remember him at all. But I do remember Aunt Babe. She married, her husband was Lee Foley, and they had 3 children, my only cousins at the time, Lee Jr., David, and John Sidney. My mother was a wonderful seamstress, and she made clothes for all of us, but especially at Mardi Gras when she would dress us all up alike. We were either clowns, or one year we were all toy soldiers, and it was really quite a sight to see the four of us. It was Dot, Tilly, Margie, and I. John and Betty and Bill weren't born yet.
Mom, we have been wondering about your mother's illness. Could you tell us about that?
Remember, my mother was only 37 years old and already had 7 children. And one day she found a lump in one of her breasts. She went to the doctor, and it was about the size of a pecan. And by the time he decided to do something about it, it was the size of an orange. And they did a radical mastectomy. But she was also too far gone to be able to survive. She stayed in the hospital for a long time. Finally, my daddy decided to bring her home for her birthday. And he and his friends redid her whole room so that it would be perfect when she got home. And I can remember her coming home for her birthday. She came home on April the 20th, and she died June the 10th, shortly after her birthday.
Mama, how old were your brothers and sisters when your mom passed away?
Well, I was 16, Dot was 14, Tilly was 13, Margie 11, Betty 10, John 10, Betty 7, and Bill 18 months old.
Can you tell me the full names of you and all your siblings?
Well, my name was Mary Agnes Rose Cecilia Zimmermann Hansen, and Dorothy was Dorothy Teresa, and Lucille was Lucille Bernadette, and Margie was Margaret Mary, and Betty was Elizabeth Ann, and John was John Antony, and Bill was Lawrence Francis.
Mama, how did your brother Bill get the name Bill?
Well, he was born Lawrence Francis Zimmermann, and when he was just a baby, my mother and father went to a movie called Broadway Bill. And when they came home, my mother was just thinking so much about Broadway Bill that she called him Little Bill. And after that, we all called him Little Bill. And my friends called him Brother Bill.
What is the connection between Uncle Milton and Aunt Merle in your family?
Well, my grandfather Landry, my mother's father, remarried. And he married Nellie Fussell, who was Milton and Merle's mother. So Milton and Merle were my mother's half-sister and half-brother.
You mentioned that Grandpa owned a hardware store and that he had a partner. Could you tell us about that?
When we lived on Lopez Street, my father and his partner, Gernon Brown, who was the coach at Jesuits, opened a hardware store. And my mother opened a flower shop in one little corner of that hardware store.
Mama, what are your memories of Christmases with your family?
Well, when I was about 7 or 8, we lived on Apricot Street up near Aunt Dot's Joliet Street house. And on Christmas Eve, my mother and Daddy would send us up to bed. And when we came down on Christmas morning, there was a beautiful Christmas tree all decorated and lit up, and all of our presents were all around it. And I can remember so much wanting a trunk doll, a doll that was in a trunk, and she had some clothes and different things, and I got that day. There was no tree, and at least my father and mother may have bought the tree and had it stashed away somewhere, and we would keep it decorated and lit up until Little Christmas, which was January the 6th.
We'd love to know about Stella.
Well, Stella came to work for us when Bill was just about 1 year old. And Stella's father was a Pullman porter, so she never had to, they did pretty well, and she didn't ever have to learn how to cook, so my mother taught her to cook the things that we liked. And we always had dinner together at night. And Stella just about raised Bill because he was so young when she came to work for us. And Mama died when he was 18 months old.
Tell us about your 9th birthday.
Well, my 9th birthday, October the 28th, my sister Betty was born. So we both have had the same birthday all these years.
Tell us about Aunt Tilly.
Well, Aunt Tilly was quite an athlete, and she was also a good dancer. She would go to the USO dances and jitterbug with all the servicemen. And everybody enjoyed having her around.
Mama, tell us a little bit about Aunt Margie.
Aunt Margie was always very neat. She and I roomed together. We bought a bedroom set together, and she always kept it real nice. She made the beds and everything for us. And she would keep her clothes real folded and nice and put away in her drawers, and the rest of us, Dot and Tilly and I, would go in there and borrow her clothes and make her mad.
Tell us about your brother John.
My brother John was very mechanically inclined. When he was just a young boy, he made a motorbike. And then later, when he was a sergeant in the Army, I think he was a mechanic. And he did mechanical work on the side. And he married, and when he was just a boy, he had an accident and broke his leg. And he broke his leg, and he was in a full body cast for I don't know how long. And it sort of depressed him that he had to stay bedridden for so long, and may have triggered his later mental problems that he had.
Tell us something about Aunt Betty when she was little.
When Aunt Betty was small, she had curly hair just like Shirley Temple, and she was around the same age as Shirley Temple, so she used to sing all of her songs, and later she became a teacher and a principal and a superintendent of schools, and she went off to Nichols State College and became a professor. And I can't think of anything else right now. When I was a child, my father was in the tile business, and he built a wading pool for us. And there were 4 of us, myself, Dot, Tilly, and Margie. John Jr. wasn't born yet. And we enjoyed the wading pool for many years. Then when Aunt Babe had young children, they moved the wading pool to her house. And my brother Bill was still little, so he used to enjoy the wading pool at Aunt Babe's just like we used to enjoy it at our house. My grandfather Zimmermann had been a brother. He didn't take final vows. So when he met my 18-year-old, he was 36 when he met my 18-year-old grandmother, and he fell in love with her, and they were married and had 5 or 6 kids.
Mama, I know there's an interesting story about Father Silos. Could you tell us that story?
Well, Father Silos was a good friend of my grandfather, Philip Antony Zimmermann. Philip Antony. And when Father Silos was sick, my great-grandfather nursed him. And he gave my grandfather his cross. And my grandfather died, and his daughter, Anne, wouldn't give the cross back to the Redemptress. And when she died, my cousin, Kent Zimmermann, gave the cross back to the priest, so they had his Father Silos's original cross. And her personality was perfect. She was always friendly and happy. In fact, happiness is one of the memories of my life as a child. We had a happy, and Connie, you can ask your daddy, his whole memories of our life was happy, singing. We always sang together and tried to harmonize. But we had a happy, fun life. I can sing to the Lord because He has dealt so bountifully with me. And that's Psalm 13, verse 6. Oh, what do you do when the day is done and everybody said they've had a lot of fun? You take the hand of your nearest friend and you shake, 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 shake. And you walk around and you say goodbye with a smile on your face and a twinkle in your eye. Take the hand of all your friends and shake, 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 shake. Goodbye, goodbye. Tell all your friends goodbye. Goodbye, goodbye. Tell all your friends goodbye.